Hello and welcome to Turning Point Tactics, the competitive Kill Team 40k podcast and YouTube channel focused on giving you the strategies and tactics to siege initiative every turning point. I'm your host Ryan and I'm here to help give you tips and tricks to elevate every part of your Kill Team experience. So no matter if you're a casual or competitive player, there should be something here for you. Ultimately, the goal for all of us is to become better opponents and have more fun in the game, and Turning Point Tactics is here to help you do exactly that. Before we begin, I want to give a massive shout out to my patrons. You guys are incredible and I hugely appreciate the support you give me. If not for the support of the patrons, the channel simply wouldn't be what it is. If you too are interested in supporting the channel, there's a few ways you can go about doing so. Firstly, you too can join the Patreon, where you'll get exclusive access to the Discord, Patreon priority questions, early access to content, exclusive content and tournament rewards. Secondly, if you find yourself buying Kill Team goodies or hobby supplies, you can use our affiliate links. This means with every purchase you make, a little bit comes to the channel. It'll cost you nothing, but help keep us and the show going. Finally, you can always support for free without spending a penny. It's as simple as hitting the subscribe button, liking the video, and sharing amongst your local community. Telling your friends about us is a great way to connect the communities together, share lessons, and help elevate everyone's game. As always, we're keen to hear your thoughts and feedback, so don't leave that comment box empty. Let us know what you think, maybe we've missed something, or maybe you have a better strategy. Drop a comment and let us know. Once again, thank you for your support. With all that said, let's get into it. Alright, let's move on to, I've got another contender for what I think is B tier, and I'll be interested to hear your thoughts. I think Corsairs sits in B tier. I think they are fine. They're good against elites. They're okay against hordes. They're just not very reliable. And I think you'll do 2-2, 3-1, and in one of those games you'll just go, "Yeah, I rolled badly." And I don't really know what the solution is to that other than making them more reliable. But I think if you did, they would suddenly skyrocket. They would go from if you gave the team reliability, they'd go from B to probably A to S tier straight away. They've got loads of good tricks. I love Deadly Ambush, but they just don't do enough reliably for me. But
yeah, I think they should sit in B where they sit. I think they're probably better than Justian. I think they definitely gain quite a bit when it comes to reliability with the previous balance patch, where they got that change, the better reroll rule within outside of 3 of your other operatives rather than outside of 6.
It's great in melee, but again they lack the problem where they are an 8 wound team trying to go into melee and they trade poorly. But that's their best play. That's where they're most reliable.
Yeah, the other thing is that they are one of those teams which I would describe as the gotcha team. I actually lost to them at the very last tournament at Warhammer World in the last season.
So we're saying S tier then? Is that where they belong?
No, definitely not. No. And that was a great example of why Kill Team is a great game. I couldn't see the door that was right in front of me, and that cost me a grenade to the face in the first activation. So it was definitely an example of my great play. but yeah, sometimes that happens. But outside of such situations, these guys are actually they probably fall within that category of teams that are a bit too fair. In a way, if you learn their gotchas, then they might be a worse version of Hunterclade.
Yeah,
I mean, if you know their gotchas, because obviously if you don't, then you may get caught by one of those. But if you do know them and if you play around them, then ultimately, they might end up to be a weaker version of Hunterclade, and this is not great. This is definitely not a place where you want to be.
For sure.
Okay, I have a suggestion for another bad team.
Okay,
team that could use some love, and the team that it definitely is waiting for the next balance data slate to finally, to get some buffs. And I'm obviously talking about Nemesis Claw. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm talking about Blades of Khaine.
Yes.
And I think they, unfortunately, my perception is that they sit next to the close friends, Hand of the Archon and Krut. I think that and unfortunately, I see them as a weak team. They do have plenty of good tricks, but before the Void Dancer nerfs, I would say, like, why would you ever pick Blades of Khaine if you can play with Harlequins? Now I'm like, yeah, I can see some arguments, but this is not because Blades of Khaine became better. This is because Void Dancers, are suddenly much worse. All things considered, I'd say top of C, yeah, probably top of C, maybe bottom B minus, not to raise too many loud voices arguing that these elves are actually strong.
Yeah, so I completely agree. I think they've got a few problems, right? And I guess I was quite hyped about this team because I saw how many different abilities that they had, right? And they do have like so many like weird things that they can pull off. And being all 3 APL is fantastic for a lot of the missions in this game. But fundamentally, I think it's their 4 attacks in melee that lets them down. And they don't really like have a way to make that better.
Yeah, I can see that. Like in the most comic way, you let's say you see your opponent bring them on the board against your team, and at certain part of the game, try to find that cinematic moment where your opponent goes like 2 backflips, shuriken, squat, shuriken, dash, shuriken, 3 command points, shuriken, and another backflip. Okay, I didn't kill your guy. So it's like I think that they just they have a potential to be a very cinematic team, but if you want to play competitive kill team, cinematic plays are probably not what you're after. And yeah, that's why, even though, and by cinematic I mean, yes, they can do lots of cool things but ultimately we don't win those games by doing cool stuff. We win those games because we control the primaries, or we do our attack ops better than our opponents, and I don't think they do much well against the rest of the field when it comes to that.
I think they could give the entire team balanced, and it would seriously help them, because that is effectively 5 attacks in a different way, and it would just, because the amount as I played against Dave at the tournament, and he just couldn't kill stuff when he really should have been, and I think that's the problem. And like, weirdly, probably the best way to play the team at the moment is just running all striking scorpions, because I think they're the most effective ones. I know Howling Banshees have weird
possibly
like use in ITD with their X-Arcs insane, but generic, I genuinely think the best option is just all striking scorpions, because it gives you access to the best aspect techniques twice per turning point, which is really important. But even then, I still think the chainswords just don't have the reliability that I want to kill stuff, and the shuriken pistols don't have that reliability either. And like their strategic ploys to give them that reliability have these weird caveats. And whenever it's like, if I shoot someone, I want to be shooting someone who's already activated, but I want to be fighting someone who's not yet activated. It's like you're an elite team that has this. Oh well, I just want to. I'm trying to make it work in this weird way, and you just don't need it. So I think top of C is probably fair for them. I think they'll
I can see that. The other problems that I definitely have is like one that you mentioned is obviously only 4 attacks in melee, but the other thing is that they haven't got a single actually heavy and effective gun. That's definitely a problem. Like I remember when they came out, and one of my colleagues from the old ones, Guy, wanted to test them out, no, sorry, it wasn't Guy. I played against Alex back then, another player from the London community. But Alex wanted to test them out, and he brought his models, and I thought, like, what the hell? I'm gonna bring my Hive fleet, and I took 3 Tyranid warriors as half of my roster, and then we quickly realized that with feeding tendrils mean that if a Tyranid warrior kills someone in melee, they regain D3 lost wounds.
Yeah.
Blades of Khaine
That's gross.
had no effective way of killing those beasts. And that was a compendium team against a bespoke team for the elves. So in a way, like, I think this is where they should sit. They lack on many different aspects when it comes to what makes a good team and kill team.
If you have some version of just a scratch, or you have, you can affect their weapon skill modifier, or you can reduce their attacks characteristic, this team is going to suck. And there are now multiple teams in the meta, at the top of the meta, that do that. And I think that's why it's going to... They're in a bad place at the moment, and I don't think it's getting better for them. And I think you have to be playing very, very well to make most of that team. Alrighty, let's talk about a team that is... So we talk about swingy and reliability issues, but
Inquisition.
but potentially do have a lot of very strong abilities, but my God, are they unreliable. So this is my opinion on Inquisition Squad, because I've seen all of the top players that I know, Ace, Mateusz, myself, Guy, I'm trying to think who else has played them recently that I've seen. All of these players have done exceptionally well with this team, except in 1 or 2 games. And it's almost always because their quarry didn't activate in the way they wanted it to, and suddenly their dice failed them, and it just didn't work out the way they wanted it to work.
Yeah, I can see that. They're definitely a team that's not reliable, and if you're going to a tournament that has 6+ rounds, let's say 7 rounds, you just at some point you'll have a game where your dice fail you, and we all know that Mateusz is a great player and an absolute monster. But I remember a conversation we had at Warhammer World once, and he said, I missed everything. And I was like, well, you play a team that hits on 4s, so tough luck.
It will happen more than you want it to.
Yeah, exactly. So it will happen. No matter how good you are at the game, at some point it will happen, and it will cost you a game if you're facing good opponents. So there's that. The way I see Inquisition, obviously absolute authority, it's one of the best abilities in the game. I agree with that. Hands down. If you can just say, no, my dear friend, you're not playing this now, you can wait until the next turning point. This is one of the strongest plays you can pull off in kill team, just to tell your opponent, no, you're not doing that. That's why I praise Locator so much. That's why I like the new abilities from Nemesis Claw and Mandrake so much, that in a different way, because they prevent operatives from being activated. But telling your opponent, no, my dear friend, you're not allowed to do that at this very point. This is very strong. The other thing is that I see Inquisition as a team that will throw that blessed grenade, and this is their reliability. Take the Breacher Grenadier, you give them a blessing, and you throw a fancy grenade, and you kill something with it. This is your reliability. And after that, you're playing with Quarry and some melee counterpunch, where I actually believe that at that point is likely that your melee counterpunch is somewhat better than your shooting, maybe outside of that pistolier with plasma. But all things considered, reliability is a problem for them, definitely. Do I see them as a strong team regardless? I would say yes, simply because they still have a lot of bodies, they still have a lot of activations, and they have absolute authority. And if you take absolute authority out of the equation, they're maybe not very bad, but they're much worse. But with that ability, Like my take is that they should still be somewhere A, maybe B plus.
I think B plus. I was just thinking now, like I think Blooded's better than them, and I think Novitiates and Kazakin are more reliable.
Yeah.
So it's like a weird dice game. I'm almost tempted to push Blooded into A tier the more I think about it.
I was about to say
And
that because
like,
we're getting too big of a B plus tier. So
I think so
oh
if
my
Blooded
God,
sits at the bottom of A, and I think Inquisition sits just below. The problem is that they have such a good ability into all of the field, but it's just unreliable. And I guess this is where it's like this is a play style question, right? Like I personally prefer reliability over potential. Like the team has massive potential, but it's not going to give it to you very often. And whereas I know like Kazakin is going to do exactly what I ask it to do when I want it to do it, so I can always blame myself when it doesn't go right. Like, so I think they might sit just below Kazakin. No, because Kazakin, they got too many models. There's many charge them.
Yeah,
I'm going to stick them in the middle. So I think Novitiates. So this is where I think they sit. They don't. The Inquisition doesn't have the melee potential to kill Novitiate melee. I think they don't like that trading game. But they can tie up the Kazakin guys and just not fight them. Like they can just sit
yeah,
there.
let's keep them there. Let's keep them there.
But like the classic thing you'll see people do is just you'll lose initiative as Inquisition. You'll nominate a quarry that's your, let's say you're playing Seek and Destroy, it's your Eliminate Guard, and they'll just run that model away. And then you have an entire turning point.
I think this is where you have to keep that other ploy that you can use only once per game, where you
denounce,
you delay, denounce, and delay the activation of your quarry in case you do lose initiative. But it may happen more than once, so that's the other thing. Yeah.
And then you're out of options. So like you have to save denounce when you don't have initiative, and you have to use quarry on the right person. And there is a chance that you just, even with that, because it's fours with balanced, there's a chance that you just whiff. I don't like the fact that the team is locked into playing basically breaches only. I think personally what they should do is make the Kazakin models and the RBTs models 6-man teams in that grouping. And I think that might help them because then they could run RBTs and they would be slightly more reliable, and they could go full melee skew if they wanted to. But I think they sit there. I think B, because you could just have good dice and you would win all your games. Like they have all the ability to do that. But I just think that you're going to like lose one or two in a tournament. And as I've said, I've seen the best players in the world play with that team and not crush tournaments that everyone would expect them to do so. And, Ace and Mateusz are the people that I'm thinking of when that.
Oh yeah, of course, and that's the worst thing about that. If I play Novitiates, you play Kaskin, and Mateusz plays Inquisition, Mateusz can always say, "Oh, it's because of the lack of reliability of my team, and you guys, you play the most reliable teams in the game, so it's a matter of your skill."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
we're on to you, Mateusz. We know what you're gonna do. We know you're gonna blame.
Yeah.
But no,
jokes aside, I think we're in agreement that this is ultimately a quite solid team. Absolute Authority will carry through many situations. You still have plenty of bodies, and you still have some cool tricks like with the Blessed Grenade, because this is a very reliable grenade in this otherwise unreliable team. And you have some melee options, you have some long range options. However, outside of that, your team hits on fours, and if you give me a team and say this team hits on fours and it may get balanced, I'm gonna say no. So playing Halfkin, like you sometimes get the attack order, and you take your bolters, and you may get a shot because your opponent may give you a shot. Okay, you can shoot me with your P1 bolter hitting on fours with that balance from the attack token, and let's say hypothetically you misplay, and that's your very last model to activate, not one of your gunners, but just a simple guy with a bolter. this is where your opponent may take that risk because you're likely not to do much with that 4+ balanced bolter. So there's
Yeah.
that.
No, I agree.
Um,
What do you want to cover
yeah.
next?
What about? What about? Yeah, I'm thinking about recent events,
Mm.
and Shane won Adepticon with Necrons, and
Yep.
then they got reworked. I don't want to say buffed or nerfed. I want to say reworked because I think this is what it is. So I'd like to look at Necrons. I personally think they're still quite strong, actually very strong.
Agreed.
I like the change to nanomine. I think it was broken, and I remember we exchanged a few messages 2 weeks ago, and we had a conversation about Necrons. It's like nanomine is still strong. It's just that now it will cut off an objective point for your opponent rather than
The entire board.
simply saying, "Oh, you cannot move out of your drop zone." Like I
Yeah.
know it's so unfair. So yeah, I'd say they're still very strong. The increased reliability when it comes to them coming back to the game heavily changes the attrition capabilities, because now you can more often play the attrition game because you expect your models to come back more often. So I think this is a huge change. I still think that the Chronomancer is the go-to option. The other options now simply become viable. Like you can choose
Yes.
them every now and then, but I would still say Nanomine because you still can cut off an objective point from your opponent, and Chronometron because that final pain plus range movement is a huge deal. And the reason why I say they're still strong is like I look at their nanomine from the perspective of how much I can achieve with a short-legged grenadier from Halfkin, who has a fringe bubble nanomine as well. And I look at Necrons and I say, okay, so your guy still flies, still can throw it very deep into the board. It simply has a smaller radius. I know it's a big deal. It has a smaller radius because size difference, but at the same time, as I said, you can still cut off an objective, or on certain maps, you'll still be able to cut off a huge chunk of the board simply because you put it in a good spot,
Yeah.
and you're more reliable coming back, and your apprentice got a further APL, and yeah, like, and on top of that, you're more reliable to come back, so you'll have fewer games where someone catches your cryptic somehow and they shoot them off the board and your cryptic doesn't get up in the following turning point, and all of a sudden, oh, I lost. So due to all of those factors, I would personally put them in S tier, and yeah, I'm looking
Oh,
forward
okay.
to hearing your feedback and comments on that.
Interesting. So you put them in S tier. So we've also seen recently, because at the Nottingham tournament, the 64-player tournament there, Hierotek, piloted by Ben Palin, came second, so undefeated 4-0, doing really well post Data Slate. We've seen them do well pre-Data Slate, and I think you touched on all the reasons why they are so good now. And I think that probably for me the biggest change is that Apprentech, because he has gone from someone that you would probably never take on the team. Like, I think genuinely, when the team first came out, a Immortal was better, to now an auto include. So I was thinking about the matchup with Felgor, and I reckon you still take the Apprentech, even though he doesn't have lethal weapons, right? Because the entire
Yeah,
team can have lethal weapons, particularly if you play ITD, it's hilarious. Your shooting becomes lethal as well. But weirdly, in that one matchup, you go, not this time. So I agree that I think they are very strong. And you think you'd put them above the Hearthkin?
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I mean, when the balance data slate dropped, I thought no, they should sit probably somewhere in A tier, then I read some comments from good players, and I listened to some feedback, like, and opinions of good players. And I think to the extent I got convinced that they're like so good that they should sit in S tier. Um, but I could easily see them like somewhere top of A as well. And yeah,
Yeah.
like
So for me, they either sit top of A or S tier. I'll. Do I think?
again, this might be again a case of what maps are you playing on? Because
Yeah.
and unfortunately, this is going to be a recurring nightmare for all of us
Yeah. To
when
try
we
and
want to,
do tier
when we
lists.
want to do tier lists or even choose a team for a tournament. Like depending on the format and the maps that's going to be played on that tournament, you will look at the format and then be like, okay, on this format, actually, I don't like Necrons as much, or on
Yeah.
this format, I don't like Galapogs because there's too much Beta Decima, and I don't fancy running up the countries with my Hulks. So yeah, but in the vacuum, or if we assume it's a third of each, I think we can safely put them top of A, maybe bottom of Metaverse. But I personally don't like to have too many teams in the S tier, so maybe top of A
Yeah, and so
is
the
yeah.
reason why I think they sit there is so. For instance, let's say you go into like a good gunline team like Pathfinders. You have to remember that they keep all the markerlights. So even though you regenerate the next turn, let's say if you got tagged up to 5 before, then you're still going to be on 4 the next turning point when it degrades. So you come back, but you're still like at risk. And then some of the melee teams, I still think, can tie you up quite effectively, because you're good in melee or you're okay in melee, but you're still not great. So I think top of A is good. I think they score really well. I could be persuaded to chuck them into the bottom of S. I guess we'll see where the last few teams fall out, and then we can probably make that call. I guess my one thing on them is they don't have that many activations. So we have to remember that 2 of their guys are still just like counters. So you effectively have 6 threats on the board, and one of the Apprentech threats, he's not that dangerous. He's a mission player. So you have 3 mission players and then 5 threats, and that's probably where the team sits. So not bad, but yeah, I think they're going to sit roughly there, and we'll see. Maybe the last few teams will affect where these fall out.
Yeah. Okay, let's do that. There's a funny parallel that you look at top of S and top of A, because both teams have essentially operatives that live twice.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the threat saturation in each of those teams might be what actually draws that differential between those teams. And goats like should sit at the very top of S or somewhere close to top of S, whereas Necrons, yeah, maybe they should sit top of A.
And I think Necrons have actually a better matchup into goats than most. Like being able to reduce their movement, having access to lots of lethal, and being able to regenerate just outside of melee when they kill you is really good for them. So I think we'll sit in
I
there for
agree.
now. But we'll see, because I think there's a few more teams, and like the next team I want to talk about, because this is probably going to impact where we sit this team as well. Wrymblade. So this is a team that I think is vying for one of like the top positions. Not in, I don't think S tier. I think they don't have quite enough for that, but I do think they're an A tier team. And I guess for me, if I was to chuck them in right now, I think they are just below Galapox, but above Starstriders.
I'm happy that you want to put them there, because I wanted to say that yes, I agree regarding A tier, but I don't want to see them above any of the top 3 A tier
Yeah,
teams.
yeah. So my opinion on this is they don't have much melee punch. I know they have the cult agents and the locust and stuff, but you really want to be trying to keeping those guys alive to do as much damage to your opponent as possible. And then if you're taking a lot of return damage, they're still only 9 wounds. They die quite quickly in melee. So you always want the Kelemorph, and then you can be persuaded with the Locust. going forwards. But the thing that I think this team struggles on is scoring tac ops reliably, because I think Seek and Destroy is their best bet, but then you're having to go into a Locust sort of loadout, and for Rob and Ransack or something like that, that's hard to keep that kind of model alive. And I think we in the game I played against Guy, I think we saw it. Like he had to get an early kill with his Locust, and then he couldn't have that later on for like a Rob and Ransack, and it's difficult to get the movement to get, say, like Route or something like that. So I don't think they score too well, but I think they have some great abilities. What do you think about them? Any other counter thoughts?
Yeah, I generally agree. The problem I have with this team is that ultimately you have certain models which act as your powerhouse as the actual engine of your team, like Kelemorph, like Lockers. Outside of that, you have that gunner with the mining laser, which is also a huge threat. But other than that, yes, you'll have mini dynamite or micro dynamite, the blasting charge, but that might as well not do much. And other than that, you end up with what with guys carrying shotguns, like not really that great. So in a way, if your opponent manages to catch one of your key pieces, this team may fall apart quite quickly, which is what I think ultimately puts them beneath or below the top of the meta. But because if you look at Commandos or Falgo, like most of those operatives more or less can do the same thing, and each of them is a threat in its own way. But when you look at Wrymblade, well, you have those key operatives, and other than that, you don't have much. So yeah.
And I think, like, in we're talking about those sort of those top tier teams. I think they just have better matchups into them. And again, we talk about double kill potential. Really, that's only possible with your cult agents. And then if you throw them away early, then you become in like it gets really difficult later on. So I think we're happy where they are. Middle of A tier seems.
Yeah. I agree. Like this is where they more or less where they should be. What about Phobos?
Now, I think Phobos struggle with the exact same problems of all elite teams. I think they have some interesting tools to deal with them, but I still think they're elite teams, and I still think that their saving grace was always smoke grenades, and even their sort of biggest hunter, the Kazakin, now has access to just deny that on one of their models a turn. I love the way that Phobos can play the mission with Reavers, but again, I think they lack reliability, and I think that they have some potentially really bad matchups, which they can't do too much about.
You mean our B+ tier?
Yeah, B+, A, and S tiers.
And above. Right,
so
yeah.
I think that they sit in B. I think that they are just below Corsairs. I mean, I could argue to go either way, because you can run the Reavers and then you have a good chance at fighting them in melee, but Corsairs out-activate you. I guess I can't deal with the obscurity. Maybe they're better than Corsairs.
Yeah, maybe they are. Like, funnily enough, before the balance data slate dropped, so before the release of Nightmare and the most recent changes, I would possibly rate them as the best elite team in the game.
Yeah.
Just because of how many things they're capable of doing in each of their activations. But now, like, I'd say Warp Coven are better. And yeah, as people may already know, Nemesis Claw is likely to be way better as well. So yeah, I think this is where they more or less where they should sit. However, I'm not so sure whether they ultimately should be positioned above Corsairs. Well, maybe they should, because of maybe solely because of the sheer number of things they could do during their activations, which is still way more than Corsairs could do when they face random opponents.
Yeah.
Maybe this is why we should keep them like where they sit right now. But yeah,
I can see it both ways because like I can see that if you don't have the smoke grenades in the right place at the right time, the Corsairs are just going to nuke your models. And even then, probably at the start of Turning Point 2, like you have to use your Omni Scrambler, so you have to set up your infiltrator. It's like one of those things to shut down the Corsair player. Phobos is going to have to be thinking about a lot of stuff, right? You need your infiltrators in the right place to Omni Scramble the right guys. You need your smoke grenades in the right place to protect your models on Turning Point 1 from a blaster shot. And even then, you're still at risk of just being charged by like the Relentless Power Weapons kind of dude. So it's a tough one. It really is. And I guess the main divider here is that the Corsair player is going to have the activation advantage. So I'm going to stick them below Corsairs because I think Corsairs.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. The other thing is that, and this is also an important argument we need to consider, is that Phobos are ultimately a team that's quite difficult to run.
Oh, for sure.
It's easy to just hit a brick wall with them, and ultimately you need a good player to run that team. Because if you look at the stats, they're not like that great when it comes to raw stats. And yes, they could do many things, but you only have 6 models, and ultimately, if you make some positioning mistakes, or you don't utilize all of your fancy abilities and backflips properly, you might end up losing too many operatives too early and just lose the game. So yeah, let's keep them where they are. What next?
Let's do Scout Squad, because that will leave Legionaries and Nemesis Claw. I think that'll be interesting to talk through. Have you played many games with Scout Squad or played against Scout Squad much at all?
Not really, but looking at
moment, aren't they?
that's like, I think there is a reason why most players prefer to pick other teams, and that reason is that if you look again, this is a mid-range team. By mid-range, I mean like 10 bodies. And
actually
2
only
APL. 9. They have 9. Okay, let's say they still qualify as a mid-range team, but yeah, like unfortunately, this is like they're not great. Like yes, you have one fully pledged Marine, and apart from that, it's a struggle.
So they are a 2 APL, 9 body team with one source of comms. I just think they lack the APL efficiency to do anything. Like, if you can just zone this team out of scoring by sitting on objectives, and there's nothing they can do. Like there's nothing they can do about it. Like, if you're playing capture, you just run guys onto objectives, and they go, all right, well, I guess I just won't score this turn, and that is difficult. And almost every team out activates them. I think they could give this team an extra body, and it wouldn't be a problem if they keep them at 2 APL. Or they need to give them or they could give the team each operative could become pseudo 3 APL. Like, they can make them have a free fight or shoot, something like that. Because at the moment, this team is just
still not be enough.
yeah, like they're not doing, I think, anything that they need to do. And again, they have so many weird requirements in their reliability mechanics. And all of their special weapons being heavy as well. It's like, I don't know, it's a lot of different things.
Unfortunately, picking this team right now is almost equal to trying to make this game more difficult than it should be for yourself. And even if they had the 10th body, and even if my memory was correct about that, I would still rate them very, very low. And that probably gives away that I'm gonna make maybe my last controversial statement of today's evening, and that's gonna be Scouts are the worst the worst team in the game right now.
Yeah, are they better than Hand of the Archon? I don't.
Well, know. Ryan, you cannot have Hand of the Archon as the worst team in the game, because the wave of hate you're going to have to withstand may shatter Turning Point Tactics in its entirety.
I agree that they sit somewhere down here, though. So I agree with you. I think APL efficiency just isn't good for them. Like, if you're playing loot with this team, like, just good luck. Like, I don't know what you do. Like, you just run out of APL to actually kill anything or do anything at all useful. And like your leader's combat ability, it's restrictive. Yeah, I think it's fine. I think they could potentially, like, if you get some early kills against Hand of the Archon, because you are both 9 activations, you might be able to kill them. I think the Kroot are just going to run away with points against you. There's just good luck trying to stop that. And even Blades of the Khaine is going to contest your objectives. So yeah, I think that's a good place for them to sit. There's somewhere in here you can argue between who's the worst team in the game between Drakari and Scouts at the moment.
But
it's not looking
ultimately, what we probably have to agree on is that if we look at the bottom 4, we can probably agree that those teams are equally bad, more or less.
Yes, in different ways, so, but yes, they're equally bad.
There are different reasons for which they are very bad. So as much as we could probably spend even more time discussing whether Hand of the Archon or Kroot are better, or whether Blades of Khaine or Scouts are better, then like those teams are just not good enough as of now in comparison to the other teams in the game, at least from the competitive standpoint, because we have to remember that we're looking at competitive perspective only. And yeah, in this case, I'd say, yeah, of course, if you're a diehard fan of Scouts, and for whatever reason, Scouts and not fully pledged Marines, play them. But at least as of now, I think you should play them with high expectations towards the next balanced data slate.
Yeah, they must get some love. Like, all 4 of these teams at the bottom, I would expect to be getting love. I can see the Void Dancers not, because they just got nerfed. So, but I can see Exaction getting love. So I think that these 5 teams down here will get something in the next data slate. My opinion.
I know you really want to see a buff for Exaction Squad. I'm telling you what's going to happen. That's my prediction. That's my hot take for today. And that's going to be Exaction are not going to get any buff, but Harlequins won't have to traverse.
yeah. Like, they'll change the nerf to Harlequins, and Exaction will stay where they are. I mean, I just really want my police boys to be good, but never mind. All right, so let's talk about Legionary, because this is a team that I think has one viable play route now, based on how much AP and damage is in the game, which is Tzeentch. Like, you have to have Tzeentch in your roster. And I think based on the melee teams that are in the game, you also have to have Slaanesh. And I know, like, the Perpetual Aggression Khorne option is great, and I love the reliability of Nurgle. And for instance, against a lot of these teams, Nurgle is the better pick. But against the teams that you suck against, it will not save you, right? Like, against Kazakin, Nurgle is an auto lose, whereas Tzeentch makes it a dice game. And like, even like, say the novitiates, Sister Superior, whatever her name is, with the plasma pistol, if you're running Nurgle, that's a dead Marine. Like, done, end of question. If you're running Tzeentch, you might just roll flies.
I agree with that. But surprisingly, this particular matchup, if we have any Legionary players here, my recommendation would be to always take something other than Nurgle and other than Tzeentch into novitiates, because with plasma, if they roll one crit and then fix another die into another crit, then it will be difficult for you to survive anyway, even if you're Tzeentch. And if you look at Flamers, they don't care about your 4-up invuln. They just wanted to shoot you anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So in a way, I'm more scared of Khorne and Slaanesh, because these two can allow Legionary to one-shot my models. And but yeah, like even aside of that fact, and because this is very much matchup specific, I agree with your take. Tzeentch is probably something you have to have on your roster. But then again, I would say that Legionary maybe even worse than Warp Coven right now.
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? Like, I didn't think I'd ever say that, but are they worse than Warp Coven? I think they might be, in a sense that I think they no. I think Legionary would beat Warp Coven. I just think that they would lose to Corsairs more often than not. And so, like, they
I
sit
can
in this
see that.
weird place where they're somewhere in B tier, and like I think they beat most of B tier, but lose to Corsairs. So maybe they're at the top of B or middle of B. I don't know, but
I'd say middle of B.
Yeah.
I'd say they should be just beneath Warp Coven, and yeah, the reason for that is that Legionary, looking at our S, A, and B plus tiers, they will probably struggle against most, if not every single team in those tiers. And they did not really gain anything in the recent changes, whereas Warp Coven actually gained quite a lot with +1 wound on Zangos, which we covered, and the crit knockdown to regular damage on the sorcerers, which combined increases their survivability and combined wound count of the team significantly. So there's that.
And the sorcerers can actually take on, I think, that the standard Legionaries fairly well in melee. Not the Grizzly Trophy guy, you can't kill him, and not the Anointed. But like the other 4 models, like if you pair up all right, you're probably going to be okay. So you just have to shoot those models with the Soul Reaper cannons. It's a weird matchup where you have to try and force people into the right models. I think it's in Legionary's favour, but yeah. So I think we sit them there. I think that's a fair place for them to be.
Yeah.
They're fine. It's entirely a dice game against a lot of the teams on top of the meta. But yeah. Which is not the case, in my opinion, for
I just wanted to say, last but not least, when we went through this tier list, you can clearly see that there is that glass ceiling for the elite teams in the B plus tier and above, where most elite teams will struggle to fight those opponents. However, the Nemesis Claw have so many fancy tools that I think they will break that ceiling. And the reason why I say that, the leader is an absolute monster with potential Justice Scratch. The ability that they have to Vox Scream is ridiculous. I would put it on similar level to Absolute Authority or Justice Scratch, maybe even better than Justice Scratch, because as I said, I rate those abilities which prevent your opponent from doing what they want to do very highly. And if you look at Justice Scratch, this is exactly that kind of ability, but that ability means, okay, if I try to kill you here, you will negate one of my attack dice. But Vox Scream just says, no, you're not activating that model.
Yeah.
Full stop. Like that. Just wait for the next activation. Or actually, I'm gonna kill them first. So this is hugely important. And then when you think about what you can add on top of that with the delay of your own activations from the prescience points, what you're gaining is an ability to manipulate the flow of the turning point both ways. You can both say, oh, I'm going to actually start activating a bit later now, and you can delay your opponent's activation when you think, oh, you're a bit too hasty here, my friend, so now you're going to wait a moment. So, and that in itself, if someone told me, but as a new elite team, they can both tell you not to activate your model and they can wait with the activation, I would say, yeah, this is huge. This was actually like the ability to say, oh, I'm just going to pass and you activate again on Hand of the Archon is one of the cooler things that they can do. Because they have to spend a command point to do that. And here you can just do it. Multiple lines then.
I want to touch on one of the matchups that everyone is going to be thinking about, right? So let's talk about Kazakin. So this team versus Kazakin is, on paper, elite team versus elite hunters It's gross. But let's talk about turning point 2, because like most of the time, most good players are going to position in a way where they're not going to overcommit, right? So turning point 1, they're probably not going to lose any models, okay? But almost guaranteed is you're going to have 2 Kazakin models on 3 APL ready to kill a model turning point 2. Probably ready to kill 2 models. Now, normally, Kazakin might win initiative, yeet themselves forward, kill a guy, and then you then maybe kill the other guy, and you go, sweet, I've traded 1 for 1. That's exactly what Kazakin want to do. Then they'll kill that guy, etc., etc. The cycle continues. But they've done what they need to with their weapons. And even if Kazakin lose the initiative, they're still going to kill someone. But now the Kazakin player has this horrible moment, right, where they go, oh, I've won initiative. I'm going to activate this guy. You go, I'm delaying his activation. Take the suboptimal pick. Go shoot your melter gun at the guy with the Grizzly trophy. And that guy might also, by the way, have just a scratch. So now you've got a melter gun with 2 attacks going against the leader. And it's like, well, that's just not going to do anything.
Yeah, and the other thing, like, if I may interrupt you for just a moment, like, even if you want to set up that fancy shot on your gunner into one of those Marines, normally you would be like, okay, I'm just gonna position myself in a way that I can, get you from further up. But with these guys, what you also have to consider on top of that is their fancy obscurity and that on top of everything else. So in the positioning against that team will be much harder for those fancy gunner plays. And if you think about obscurity combined with the ability to just vox scream at someone, it might be hard for you to make good positioning plays, to end up with an upper hand, making those trades on board. Because what that tells me is that you have to either consider playing from defense position, so you're gonna do counter punches, but this is not exactly what you want to do turning point 2 if you go into an elite player, because you want to start killing them early so they don't kill you, and you can't really do that. Or you may want to consider oversaturation, but this puts you in a very dangerous spot. So in a way, it's like, no, not really a good strategy. If that makes sense. And ultimately, Nemesis Claw, if they want to, again, like we discussed that before with another team, they can make a decision to play defensively. Because if you're lucky and you roll D3 for 6 prescience tokens and you're very conservative turning point 1, then in theory, I'm not saying it's going to be a good play, but in theory, you could wait out 6 activations turning point 2 before you do anything.
Yeah. And I think, like realistically, you're always going to be saving for the just a scratch.
Oh yeah, that as well. Like,
because
if
so
someone...
strong. And I guess the reason why I should touch on this as well, like if you make your armor save, so you have a 3-up save, which you're going to CP reroll for definite if you fail it, and you just a scratch the other hit, a plasma gun doesn't kill you. Unless the melt gun gets a crit, it won't kill your leader. Like, that is some wild durability. And bear in mind, you're probably not having rerolls, and you might be -1 attack dice. The point that I was just wanted to hit on as well is the risk to the Kazakin player if you lose initiative versus Nemesis Claw, right? Because let's say you set yourself up, so you are in threat range now of these 2 guys. Well, they're going to charge one of you, kill you, maybe get a double kill, and remove one of your APT weapons. You now go to activate your second APT weapon. Denied.
They say Vox Screen.
And so suddenly you've now lost all of your capability through one initiative roll. I know you can reroll initiative roll as Kazakin. I know it's in your favor. But if it goes wrong, suddenly you're just out of the fight. The Just a Scratch, the Grizzly Trophy, that durability buff cannot be underestimated. The ability to shut off rerolls is massive for certain teams. Like, it completely changes the way that like Wrymblade and Star Striders and Hierotek have to play into these teams. If you're a reroll reliant team, like it's a completely different ballpark. I think this team's really strong. I still think that they're going to struggle against, teams like your Pathfinders, who can just out-activate you with so many activations. But at least I think it's a bit better.
I'd say I would put them beneath Halfkin. Like, I know they're very strong, but I think Halfkin still kill them with fancy grudge tokens, and they have certain, like, it just the threat saturation from Halfkin is probably another level of that glass ceiling for elites. Because even if you play better than your opponent, you might end up in a situation where a regular P1 bolter will kill you because you have 3 grudge tokens on you, and that's it.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's a funny interaction which I think for about just now, which is the Vox Scream versus Spaceship Laser from Star Striders.
That is an interesting point.
Because because the laser, the support asset, is instead of the activation of a model.
So I think you can delay an operative. You can't delay an activation.
Exactly. I think you can say, oh, I don't want you to activate that model, and you say, yeah, sure, fine, but I don't want to activate that model. I want to shoot you with a laser from my ship, and you cannot affect that. I think this is how it works. I might be wrong, but
I think that the APT beam still goes through, and also to note, the Grizzly Trophy won't affect it because it affects attack characteristics of weapons that you're equipped with, and you're not equipped with a orbital beam.
With a spaceship.
It's with a spaceship. It's coming from somewhere else, so don't get caught out with that. I think that would still hit you, but I think like the assassin doesn't enjoy being injured and having one less attack dice or anything like that, and the auras that you can potentially play with these people if you keep the guys near enough to each other, so you have some overlapping abilities, can be really strong, right? Because you could have potentially a Grizzly Trophy overlapping with -1 weapon skill, ballistic skill, overlapping with no rerolls, and suddenly you can take one of the best models in the game, but if you say you're now -1 to hit, -1 attack, and and you don't have any rerolls, suddenly they're not that good. And that it can become really brutal. And that's a weird stacking effect of 3 elites. But
I'd say like on one hand we say, okay, so you can still shoot them with the laser from the starship and spaceship when we look at Elysian Star Striders. However, if the pilot of Nemesis Claw is a good player, then they will imagine 2-inch circles painted in red around those operatives from the Star Striders, and they'll be like, just don't stand on the red.
yeah.
And this is what they have to remember. And of course you can say, oh yeah, you can move in after they activate the operative, but we need to remember that such positional play for the support asset from the Star Striders will prove to be much more difficult with Vox Scream and Presence tokens, because ultimately the Nemesis Claw player, if they really want to, they will be able to almost even out the amount of activations between them and a 10-man kill team.
Yeah, and it's, I think that's where the strength is. I think turn 1 you're going to generate a CP and you're going to keep your prescience tokens because you're going to be activated whatever happens. And then turn 2, it's the being able to see what the board state is and go, oh, we'll see what happens. But potentially, if you're playing against Hierotek, say, you might just use your delays and then they no longer have activation advantage. That could be crazy. So it depends on how many operatives your enemy team is, but it gives you a lot of strength. And again, in the elite matchups, if you're playing against another elite team, it guarantees you the last activation. And that is so strong.
That's absolutely brutal.
It's so strong. So I think they are by far the best elite team. I think they can break through the glass ceiling, particularly now that we've seen Vet Guard get toned down a little bit. I'm hopeful, but I think they're one of the better teams in the game. And I think right now, so if we were to go through and have a look at our tier list, in S tier we've got Felgor, Pathfinders, Commandos, and Mandrakes. I think we're pretty happy with that.
Oh, I thought we were doing it upside down. No.
Felgor are the worst team in the game. In the A tier, we have Hierotek, Hearthkin, Nemesis Claw, Galapox, Wrymblade, Starstriders, and Blooded. I think that seems pretty fair. I'm almost tempted to put Blooded above Starstrided. I don't know. Well, I think we'll leave them there.
Or maybe we should swap Starstriders with Blooded.
I think that might
just
be
because if you look at the very top of the tier list, I think Starstriders might struggle into certain matchups from the top of the tier list more than Blooded would, because Blooded ultimately are about threat saturations in melee.
All 4 of those S tier.
Whereas with Blooded, you can certainly play some of those matchups.
Yeah, true. For instance, Starstriders versus Felgor, I think so. I don't even know what you do in that matchup, if I'm honest. It's not good. B+ tier, we have Novitiates at the top, Inquisition, Kazakin, Hunterclade, Breachers, and Vetguard. And then... Yeah?
Here my comment would be that ultimately I think I like Vetguard more than Breachers. Because they play mission better, but yeah, I know I'm not huge on Breachers. I don't really
14 versus 12. It's an interesting one. I think. I don't know. I think a good Breachers player is going to have the reliability and the double kill potential over a good Vetguard player more often than not. Is my bet. So,
okay.
Because if you have the GA2s in the right place, you could potentially get like a GA2 grenade with, like, say, an Axe Jack, and now you've tied up a model, killed a model. If they in Death Atonement in the wrong place, you could potentially use that GA2 to tie up people where you need them. Straight down. I don't know. I just think that...
Considering that I don't really regard Breachers as a powerful team, I'm glad that you're not giving me any reason to paint my Vetguard.
Yes, the poor Kriegers. All right, so B tier, Chaos Cults, Warp Coven, which might be dangerously high. We'll see how time plays out. We'll see. Legionary, Corsairs, Phobos, and Strikeforce Justian. Interesting to see where most of the elites are sitting right now. B-.
I think some people might want to crucify us for leaving Warp Coven in B after the solid buff that they received. But our argument, as I understand, is look at B+ and above and tell us where they will have an easy game.
Yeah, like over half the field for them is still tough, I think. Yeah, I agree. Then B-, Intercession, Exaction Squadron, Void Dancers, I think seems fair. And C tier is where we're going to get the most amount of hate, but I don't disagree with where they play. I think all of those teams, I would like to see them get something to change the way that they operate. Did you want to quickly touch on Compendium teams? Noting we're 3 hours in, but
yeah, time flies. But yeah, it was a great conversation. Yeah, I'd say, like, with Compendium, ultimately we have to remember that if you're bringing a Compendium team to a tournament, and this is ultimately a competitive tier list, you made a decision not to set your expectations too high. Obviously, you'll have better chances with some teams like Tyranids, like Science, because of their free mission action and lots of AP weapons, like Custodes, because they just beat the base stat line of many other teams, or Death Guard. But yeah, like at the same time, we have to consider that, like, you probably, for each of those teams, you probably have an equivalent in bespoke section that does the same thing but better.
Yeah.
So in a way, this is what we have to consider. However, on an occasion you will see some players doing well with either High Fleet or Custodes. There were cases where Custodians like won events, even though we will deeply into the second edition of Kill Team. So yeah, there we are. And what I would say as well is that this is obviously just a loose conversation based on our opinions, and it's nothing set in stone. And it might be that some teams will prove to be way better or way worse than we estimated them to be. But yeah, like I think this more or less wraps it up. Would you say that
Yeah, I completely agree.
makes sense?
And I think we touched on the sort of the top teams there. If you want our opinion, I think Tyranids, the original Imperial Guard, Custodes, Death Guard, Chaos Demons, and weirdly, I think the Breaches out of, and pretty much only the Breaches out of the Tau Compendium, because they can get 3 inches, like ignore cover, balanced, hitting on 3s, AP1 guns that are 4/5 damage. And then after that, you have your sort of like brand new to the game teams like Grey Knights. But I agree with you, like, you would be better off taking a different team. I think you'd have more options available to you, and the players that we see winning with those teams are winning because they're really good players, not because the companion team is really good. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah, of course.
It's not there's no secret source hidden in Compendium that someone hasn't found yet. In my opinion, it's just good players running with good teams.
Yeah, I would say like if you really, really want to take a Compendium team, then you can obviously consider High Fleet with 10 Gene Stealers plus 6 Warriors list. You can consider Scions because they can get up to 12 activations, and they can get lots of AP weapons if they want to. Custodes because they're very tough. Then I would probably say Demons are better than Death Guard because simply because you can take 12 of them and
Yeah,
they're
that's true.
decent in
That's
melee.
true.
And they may prove on certain maps they may prove to be surprisingly good into some better teams, simply because if you're running them into a melee team and you have more bodies and all of them have power weapons, that might be good enough. But ultimately, we know that they are still a Compendium. So yeah, there we are.
Agreed. So what we covered there is a lot of subjective opinions from competitive players about where the meta sits. But you do know some people that are a little bit more objective about the game and perhaps might be able to provide a different look other than opinions. Do you want to talk about some of the stats that are available to people online?
Yeah, so thanks for the shout out, and I wanted to mention that if you're interested in tracking almost live changes to win rates and pickup rate of certain teams and statistics when it comes to Kill Team, I would recommend you go to Kill Team Stats. I think there will be a link in the video description.
Yeah, we'll check it at the bottom.
Have a look at that. This project is run by my longtime friends. Shout out to Piotrek and Michał. And they're doing a really good job making sure that they download the data from BCP, so it's nothing taken, out of thin air. It's solid data from BCP and the tournaments that are being run in Kill Team, and yeah, there you can track the win rate. Of course, statistics are there to help us, but given that we're a small system, all things considered, they will not always reflect the actual power level of all the teams. Like I remember that in past months, like Novitiates had like crazy win percentage across the board, which would indicate that the best players with the team would probably win more games that they play. So yeah, there's that. But even like putting that aside, stats can prove to be really helpful when we want to prepare ourselves for a tournament or we want to get a gist of what the meta looks like. And in many ways, there will be a better source of objective information about the game and its state than those tier lists, because the tier lists are ultimately always biased. Like this one will be biased by my view and Ryan's view, and yeah, if you look at other content creators, they will have their own view, and if you put those tier lists one next to another, there maybe aside of the S tier, they very rarely match up. So
Yeah,
that's
true.
a good testament to the fact that tier lists are ultimately subjective. So if you want raw data, go to Kill Team Stats and see what's up there.
Ideal. Completely agree. And like, I'm hoping that when people listen to this back, because we did talk for quite a while on these things, but I think what I'm hoping it gave people is like some really in-depth analysis as to why we think those teams sit where they sit. Because not everything is as you said, completely transparent in stats or vice versa. And maybe our opinion is not necessarily represented, because for a long time I, for instance, thought Blades of Khaine would be really good because I thought there was potential there, but that potential has never been realised. So, and we've seen that now months on. So that's been a hopefully very, very interesting chat for people, and I think people will take a lot away from it. But like, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and talking to me for such a massive long period of time, because we even had chat before this. So I appreciate I've stolen your evening from you. Before we close out the show, is there anything else that you wanted to shout out? Any like things you want to try and plug before I close us off here?
Yeah, like first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure and a great time discussing the new meta game and the tier list. I had a ton of fun, and yeah, I'll be always happy to return to the podcast in the future if you would ever want to have another conversation with a jester like me. Other than that, to all the listeners, I hope you had fun listening to this podcast, and all I can say is play more Kill Team and play more games, and yeah, help our community grow.
Absolutely, I echo that completely. To all the Scout players and Hands of the Archon players that are there telling me how wrong I am, and they're actually S tier, get out there, get them on the table and prove me wrong. Drive that win percentage up, and then I'll eat my words and make a public apology. Thank you again, Bart. It's been absolutely awesome. That is going to bring us to the end of this episode, and hopefully you found something new or useful while listening. If you did, throwing us a like would be greatly appreciated, and share this with your friends so they can benefit as well, and they can hear the thoughts of both myself and Bart talking about all these teams and what we think makes them to tick. If you want to make sure you don't miss any episodes, make sure you hit that subscribe button and select the bell icon as well, so you get notifications as soon as the next one drops. That really is the best way to help a small YouTube channel like ours. If you can't wait and you do want early access, you can join the Patreon, where you get exclusive access to all of our content ahead of time, as well as some exclusive videos, access to our Patreon only Discord, tournament rewards, and all that sort of good stuff. If you are an existing patron, let me once again just take this moment to say a massive thank you for your support. You are what keeps this channel going, and it really is appreciated. As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback, so drop a comment below and we'll get right to you. Thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, Ryan. This has been Turning Point Tactics, and we'll see you next week. That brings us to this episode. Hopefully you found something new or useful while listening. If you did, throwing us a like would be greatly appreciated, and share this with your friends so they can benefit as well. If you want to make sure you don't miss any episodes, make sure to hit subscribe and select the bell icon so you get notifications as soon as the next episode drops. It really is the best way to help a small channel like ours. If you can't wait and you do want early access, you can join the Patreon, where you get exclusive access to all of our content ahead of time, as well as exclusive videos, access to the Discord, and tournament rewards. If you are an existing patron, let me take this moment once again to say a massive thank you for your support. As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback, so drop a comment below and we'll get right to you. Thank you so much for listening. I'm your host Ryan, this has been Turning Point Tactics, and we'll see you next time.